Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. On behalf of the university, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you today. President Bollinger and now Provost Cotworth send their apology. President Bollinger is unable to be here today, but he wanted me to share his regard and express his gratitude to all of you for your hard work on freedom of expression and freedom of the press. This university is dedicated to advancing research and policy work on those issues, whether through the work of our faculty and scholars at the Graduate School of Journalism, the School of International and Public Affairs, Columbia Law School, and most recently the First Amendment Knight Center that was established a year ago. And of course through Columbia Global Freedom of Expression, which was launched in 2014. At the time, the leading concerns that Columbia Global Freedom of Expression were confronting included censorship and suppression of voices, violence, of course, and killings, blasphemy laws, government surveillance, and so on. And as you probably have all experienced, those challenges have grown in number and complexity. They also include mass breaches in the protection of personal data, the dissemination of fake news, and the potential to disrupt democratic processes. In the face of rising authoritarian leaders, the subsequent rollback of freedom of expression globally, and jurisdictional clashes over technology, Columbia's commitment to supporting and defending freedom of expression and international norm on freedom of expression has deepened. And tonight, we are celebrating both resilience and conviction. We are honoring fact-based activism and normative risk-taking. Tonight, we celebrate some of the many around the world who have overcome censorship, even when backed by violence, have defied seemingly insurmountable power, even when backed by financial resources, and have stared down populism, hatred, and bigotry. Their battlefield are the courtroom, and their armory, the rule of law. Interpreting fact, amplifying voices, revealing action through the lens and tools of the law and of global norms, amplifying in the highly formal and often deeply intimidating spaces of the court, voices from the street, experiences of those living at the margin, demand of a public excluded or silenced. Against the odds, these achievements are as huge as they are humanizing. Columbia Global Freedom of Expression, and I in particular, are deeply honored to be supporting these actors and their institutions, whose actions are protecting the rule of law and upholding international human rights norms, and doing so at a time when both are under attack. Doing so at a time when the reach and authority of the multilateral global project are questioned or rejected. With these erosions, the very notion of our common humanity is scorned for migrants and refugees, for the poor, minorities, for citizens and non-citizens alike, for them and for us. And so there is a sense that our world is at an historical junction, at history's crossroad, of a world undergoing dynamics of profound disruption. The post-World War II system and the principle upon which it is predicated, the freedom from fear and want, the freedom of information as a cornerstone of our global society, these appear to be under increasing duress, and their demise no longer something only to be envisaged in a science fiction novel. But I believe that our time is not and will not be defined only by these attacks. It will be defined, and it is defined just as much by our responses, by our resistance, and by the resistance. Debates for the soul and over the value of our democracy and our global society have turned loud and sour. Against executive decisions and reform motivated by bigotry and greed for power, the streets speak. And they are being backed by courts, by judges, by lawyers, at least some of them, who are upholding and protecting fundamental freedom. The Columbia Global Freedom of Expression Prize nominees and winners stand tall among the ranks of that resistance. They demonstrate the fantastic outreach of freedom of expression and information, the capacity of this fundamental right to protect a range of other rights, the right to health, the right to be protected against discrimination, and the right to preserve our dignity. This evening, we are celebrating those who disrupt the disruption, who demand boldly, who inquire courageously, who want and claim dissent. And there is much to dissent against. Our keynote speaker and our master of ceremony, I think, is particularly well suited for that celebration. He is a master at disruption, a medical doctor turned satirist who has used humor and his popular TV show to criticize the ruling powers in his home country, Egypt. He has been on the receiving ends of tens of lawsuits filed against him, even as arrest warrant was issued in March 2013. In recognition of his impact, Youssef was listed by Time magazine as the most influential for 2013 under the Pioneers category. He was awarded the International Press Freedom Award by the CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists, and was chosen by Foreign Policy magazine as one of the global thinkers for the same year. And therefore, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Bassem Youssef to the floor and to lead us in that ceremony. Thank you, Bassem.
Thank you very much. It's time to change from a very intellectual French accent into a very scary Arabic accent. So if you're not scared yet, you have time. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be a master of ceremony and MC without any CDs, but I'll manage. My name is Bassem Youssef. I was born, raised, and became famous in Egypt because I had my own political satire show. I made fun of military and religious regimes, and I learned that both of them have one thing in common. They do not have a sense of humor. I became very successful in Egypt, so successful that I have eventually to escape my country. So that is a warning against you being too successful. I left my country, I escaped a dictatorship. I came in time as you guys are starting your own. You're still in the beginning, you have a lot to learn. So I get invited a lot to speak about freedom of expression and the role of comedy and satire in standing against oppression. So as you might imagine, my speeches has become very repetitive. So tonight I'm not going to speak about how comedy stands against oppression or dictatorship. We all know that. We already know that how beautiful and fancy comedy and satire is. Tonight, I'm actually going to give a guide on how oppressors work, what techniques they use to stifle freedom of expression. So let us all try to understand the oppressors. I mean, they are humans too. They're horrible humans. But let's try to understand how they work. So I came up with a checklist, a manual on how oppressors work. And if you are a potential oppressor in this room, please leave, because this is kind of a great cheat sheet, so you don't need to be here. And when I talk about oppressors, I don't just speak about political leaders in power. An oppressor could be a representative of a religious authority. It can be someone who claims some sort of moral authority, someone who will use religion, patriotism, tradition, or assumed moral standards of society, whatever that means, to stifle your freedom of expression. An oppressor might be a person, it could be a group of people, or even a whole society. So here we go. Here are the checklist of how oppressors work. Number one, oppressors tend to belittle comedians and satirists. They will call them jokes, clowns, and fools. But in the process, they are the ones who are turning into jokes. And they are the ones who are becoming clowns, and they are the ones making fools out of themselves. Number two, oppressors will tell you that this is not the right time to use humor. That you need to be sensitive about when to use satire. People are not ready for this. But for them, it is always the right time to take away your freedom in the name of God, social moral codes, or national security. Number three, they will put limits on what you can talk about. They will tell you, you can't make fun of, criticize, or question our symbols. A symbol could be a leader, a historical character, an ideology, a statue, or a flag. Number four, they will alienate people and turn them against you. They will say that you don't have the best interest of the country at heart. They will call you unpatriotic, godless, even a traitor or an infidel. And I'm speaking from a personal experience. Number five, they will accuse you of being offensive, insensitive, impolite, rude, a danger to society's moral code, whatever that means. They will demand that you be reasonable and polite, but they will commit the worst atrocities and don't find that offensive or insensitive. Number six, now this is their best one. They will use their best and most effective weapon, fear. Fear sells, fear works, fear moves the masses. Scare the hell out of people and they will believe anything. Make them worry about their safety, identity, religion. Tell them that the whole world is against them. Fear is the perfect weapon. But sarcasm is the perfect remedy to fear. When you laugh, you're not afraid anymore. But they don't want that. They want you scared and afraid, or naked and afraid, like that reality TV show. I know that many complain about satire being offensive, but I've got news for you. Satire is meant to offend. It is meant to disrupt. It is meant to insult. And if the oppressors feel insulted or offended, well, good job. I look back at my life in Egypt and I remember how I had to deal with two authoritarian regimes and their supporters who were offended by satire, but not by oppression. Those were people who found ample time to persecute people, but didn't seem to have enough time for a couple of jokes. They were insulted by humor, but not by injustice. They were offended by subversive satire, but not by tyranny. Oppressors and their supporters will fight satire and humor because satire disrupts the status quo. And the status quo is the only thing keeping those people in power. I talked today about how authority is very hostile against humor and satire, but their censorship doesn't just stop at that. History teaches us that painters, actors, singers, comedians, poets, writers have all been the targets of oppressors. It is not just satire, it is the mere act of liberating your mind through art, performance, and creativity that really pisses them off. A creative mind is a liberated mind, and a liberated mind is the oppressor's biggest enemy. It's imaginative, it's unpredictable, and it's a problem. Oppressors have limited imagination. And no matter how smart they are in coming up with ways to control and maintain power, deep inside, they are very, very stupid. That's why they will censor, ban, and prevent any form of human artistic innovation, not just because it exposes how limited they are, but because it allows masses to break away from their comfort zone. It pushes people to question their authority and their entitlement. Art in its free, liberated form is uncomfortable, disruptive, and unpredictable. These are all qualities that authorities don't like. These are traits that oppressors will fight, and these are dangers that dictators will always seek to destroy. A creative populace is an inquisitive populace. A society that respects and encourages creativity is a society with too many questions. Oppressors do not like questions. Oppressors don't like to be held accountable. Questioning is such an unwelcomed habit. I come from a region in the world that is going now through very tough times. Many are looking at this region and have given up on us. Many think that the Arab Spring was an unnecessary disaster. But if you look beyond the destruction and the disappointment, you can see the silver lining. You can see millions of young people practicing something that their parents were deprived of, questioning. They question everything, the military, religious authority, and the way society norms and tradition are used to control people. And they do that through celebrating their creativity, their innovation, and through their own discovery of art, humor, and the love of performance. Questioning is the prequel of a revolution. So maybe we haven't seen the end of it yet. Maybe we're just warming up. This was supposed to be the end of my speech. I was supposed to speak about my experience and what I have seen as a satirist and end with the usual hopeful note about the battered state of the Middle East. I have to say that when I make these kinds of speeches, I feel that there's something missing. Here I am, another Arab Middle Easterner, speaking in an event hosted and attended by people from the West who really understand and cherish democracy, really understand and cherish freedom, who really feel sorry for us because poor us can't get our heads around simple human behaviors and modern Western values like coexistence and living in peace. I have to say, I feel like I'm in a freak show. I feel that I come here talking about how bad things in my country, in my region, so people in the West can feel better about their lives. But then I look back at my region, my backward, horrible region, and I see that all of those tyrannical regimes, all these dictators who oppressed my people, who systematically fought all attempts of thought liberation and freeing the potential of young liberal youth, leaders in the Middle East who fueled radicalism, supported dictators, and even caused civil wars, those leaders could not have done this alone. They needed help. And that help came in the form of money, investments, global support, and weapons. And those weapons were not made and manufactured in the Middle East. Most of those weapons, military gear and oppressive police tools, were made elsewhere and were willingly sold to our oppressors. Most of those weapons were made in the West, the advanced, modern, liberated, peace-loving West. I often get this sympathetic question from peace-loving Europeans and Americans: what can we do to help? We feel very sorry for you. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that if this continues, if the biggest dictators in the world are buying your government's weapons, and through that they're buying your government's silence, there isn't anything that you can do. When you see the sea of radicalism and refugees coming towards you, know that this was not created in vacuum. It was created in collaboration. The ideas of radicalism were revived, sponsored, and financed by the same countries who are best friends of the West. So I find it amusing when we pretend, where did this all come from? I'm sorry if I made you a little bit uncomfortable. That's what I do. I wanted to be honest with myself and honest with you. I didn't want to give another inspirational, hopeful speech so that we can feel good about ourselves as we head out to sip our cocktails. So I invite you all to live in discomfort, to make and support art that is annoying, disruptive, and unconventional. Celebrate art, humor, and the love of performance, and know that if you are making certain people angry, furious, and uncomfortable, then probably you are doing something right. Now, after I made everybody uncomfortable, let me introduce the first award. The first prize to be conferred this evening is in the significant ruling category. With this prize, Colombia Global Freedom of Expression recognizes a ruling rendered anywhere in the world that has protected freedom of expression and information and advanced or strengthened global understanding of freedom of expression and information. The 2018 Global Freedom of Expression Prize in the significant ruling category goes to the sugary drinks decision rendered by the Constitutional Court of Colombia in August 2017. Now, I had to ask about this decision, because this is like a topic that's very close to my heart. And I understood that the sugary drinks, the soda drinks in Colombia, tried to hide facts and data, which is very difficult where we have Facebook that basically we have absolutely no privacy. But they were hiding data about like what the harms and the problems that sugary drinks were causing and how the big conglomerate were hiding this. And they fought it and they won, which is great. In return, here we have them sponsoring the Super Bowl, so good luck. So to present the prize and the runner-up, please welcome to the stage, and I need to know when, because now we had the difference. Are we back? Yes, Irene? Is Irene? Irene Khan, please. Irene Khan, member of the award committee. Where have you been, Irene?
Okay, sorry for being late and disrupting your program. I have been trying to figure out the difference between law library and law library. You see, it's my accent. That's the problem of being a foreigner. Let me start by saying that this year we had an incredibly strong slate of nominations from around the world. 31 nominations under this category, and most of them of excellent quality, which of course put us, the jury, in a very difficult situation. Lots of choices to be made, because freedom of expression has so many facets. So just to give you a taste of the kind of struggle we went through, let me highlight a few of the rulings that were found to be particularly significant. There were several decisions nominated about violence against journalists, killings of journalists, something that Bassem was talking about. In one sense, it's a deeply disturbing trend, but in another sense, the court decisions indicate a welcome departure from impunity. And we had in particular a decision from Paraguay, the public prosecutor versus Vilmar Acosta, which actually sought to convict not the killer, but the political mastermind behind a journalist's killing. Exactly what you were saying, Bassem, going closer to the root of the problem. There were some excellent African decisions from Kenya, from South Africa, showing the strength of African courts in protecting rights and the rule of law. For example, in Prime Media broadcasting against the Speaker of the National Assembly, the South African court explored the concept of open parliament. And in that context, looked at the right of the public, freedom of expression, that the public must be given access to parliamentary proceedings. And for the first time, we received several nominations of UN bodies, including the UN Human Rights Committee. These were nominations for the UN bodies, and in particular, the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention in the case of Stella Nyanzi against Uganda. This is a Ugandan journalist, provided a very good defense of freedom of expression in an online setting in the context of the right to insult. Something, again, you would appreciate, Bassem. And for the first time, another first we had was a nomination for a South Korean ruling in North Korea Tech Organization versus the National Intelligence Service of South Korea, where the Supreme Court determined that foreign citizens and foreign websites have a standing in South Korean court. And it also reviewed very carefully the grounds, the limitations of the ground of national security. So you can see a wide range of very exciting, interesting cases. But the one that we decided to give the award, the 2018 Global Freedom of Expression Prize in the significant ruling category, is of course sugary drinks. It has a rather mundane name Decision T543, but we think sugary drinks is much more listener-friendly because it tells you basically what it's about. It's about the right of consumers to receive information about the risks that sugary drinks pose to our health. And here, the Constitutional Court of Colombia found that prohibiting the NGO Educar Consumidoras from broadcasting a commercial about the health risks of sugary drinks constitutes prior censorship and therefore is not permissible.
Buenas tardes. Para la Corte Constitucional de Colombia es un honor recibir el Premio a la Libertad Global de Expresión en la categoría de decisión judicial y agradece a la Universidad de Columbia este reconocimiento. La sentencia T-543 de 2017 resolvió un caso en el marco de una campaña de salud pública adelantada por una organización no gubernamental. En esta campaña se alertaba sobre los efectos del consumo excesivo de bebidas azucaradas a través de la difusión por distintos medios de comunicación de una serie de mensajes informativos. La Superintendencia de Industria y Comercio, que es la autoridad administrativa colombiana encargada de la protección al consumidor, recibió en el año 2016 una queja sobre el contenido del comercial. La queja fue presentada por una de las mayores productoras de bebidas azucaradas en Colombia. Luego de analizar el comercial, la Superintendencia ordenó retirarlo de manera inmediata y remitir de manera previa a su comunicación toda pieza publicitaria relacionada con el consumo de bebidas azucaradas que se pretendiera transmitir a través de cualquier medio de comunicación, incluidas las redes sociales. Todo esto con el fin de ejercer un control previo sobre la información, imágenes, proclamas y demás afirmaciones efectuadas. En cumplimiento de estas órdenes, la ONG remitió los estudios científicos que respaldaban el comercial, estudios que no fueron analizados por la superintendencia. Esta situación llevó a la presentación de dos demandas, una por la ONG directamente afectada y la otra por numerosos ciudadanos a título personal y como miembros de diferentes organizaciones de la sociedad civil. Estas demandas fueron apoyadas por organizaciones nacionales e internacionales. Al estudiar el caso, la Sala Novena de Decisión determinó que la Superintendencia vulneró el derecho fundamental al debido proceso por no haber vinculado a los demandantes a la actuación administrativa. También que se vulneró el derecho fundamental a la información tanto en su dimensión individual como colectiva al adoptar medidas que configuraban censura previa. Para llegar a esta conclusión, fueron primordiales los estándares consolidados por la comunidad internacional en materia de libertad de expresión. En particular, quiero resaltar los aportes de la Relatoría Especial sobre la promoción y protección del derecho a la libertad de expresión de las Naciones Unidas, el Comité de Derechos Humanos de las Naciones Unidas, la Comisión Africana de Derechos Humanos y de los Pueblos y su Relatoría Especial sobre Libertad de Expresión, la representación para la libertad de los medios de comunicación de la Organización para la Seguridad y la Cooperación en Europa, el Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos, la Relatoría Especial para la Libertad de Expresión de la OEA, la Comisión y la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos. A partir de esos pronunciamientos, la Corte Constitucional destacó la importancia de la libertad de expresión en una sociedad democrática. En este sentido, señaló que no solo debe garantizarse la difusión de información o ideas que son recibidas favorablemente o consideradas como inofensivas o indiferentes, sino también aquellas que ofenden, resultan ingratas o perturban al Estado o a cualquier sector de la población. Asimismo, la Corte destacó que la libertad de expresión deja un margen muy reducido a cualquier limitación del debate sobre cuestiones de interés público y que por lo tanto toda restricción se presume sospechosa y debe ser sometida a un test estricto de proporcionalidad. En el caso concreto, la Corte encontró que el comercial transmitido no promocionaba ningún producto. Por el contrario, se enmarcaba en una campaña de salud pública que pretendía advertir sobre los riesgos del consumo excesivo de bebidas azucaradas en la salud. En consecuencia, determinó que las medidas adoptadas por la superintendencia no estaban previstas en la ley, no perseguían una finalidad imperiosa y no eran necesarias. Además, señaló que constituían medidas de censura previa, lo cual se encuentra proscrito tanto por la Convención Americana como por la Constitución Política de Colombia. En relación con la censura previa, la Corte resaltó que ésta puede presentarse de distintas maneras que van desde los regímenes de autorización previa más expresos hasta métodos más sutiles e indirectos. La censura también puede tener un contenido negativo referente a los obstáculos o prohibiciones sobre la publicación de contenidos, o uno positivo relativo a la adecuación de contenidos a los requisitos establecidos por las autoridades estatales. Finalmente, la Corte señaló que el contenido de la libertad de expresión y sus respectivos límites también se aplican a las publicaciones efectuadas en Internet y a través de las redes sociales. Una vez proferida la sentencia T-543 del 2017, la Superintendencia solicitó la nulidad, con fundamento en que desconocía el precedente constitucional. No obstante, el 14 de marzo de este año, la Sala Plena de la Corte decidió por unanimidad dejar la decisión en firme y con ello continuar protegiendo la libertad de información de los consumidores en su dimensión individual y colectiva. Esta sentencia constituye sin duda un avance en Colombia y en la región sobre el alcance que tiene la libertad de expresión en el ejercicio de los derechos de los consumidores a conocer información relevante y a elegir los productos que consumen conforme a su propia orientación de vida. La libertad de información le permite a las personas reconocer los riesgos de los productos que consumen, lo que permite a su vez garantizar la prevención y protección en materia de salud. Esto es de la mayor relevancia frente a una epidemia global de malnutrición y obesidad, así como de las demás problemáticas que en la salud tiene el consumo excesivo de bebidas azucaradas. De esta manera, en una sociedad democrática, la libertad de información tiene un papel protagónico para el seguimiento de los productos alimenticios por parte de la sociedad civil y las autoridades competentes. Por eso, el mensaje que se quiso reiterar es que una sociedad solamente es plenamente libre en la medida en que esté bien informada. Para terminar, quiero manifestar una vez más que para la Corte Constitucional de Colombia es un gran honor recibir esta distinción y que espera, de la mano de la comunidad internacional en su conjunto, seguir avanzando en la defensa y promoción de la libertad de expresión. Muchas gracias.
Now, this case, of course, has lots of significance. An important one is the restrictions, the fight, I would say the fight between the private sector, companies that control, in effect, our right to information, and civil society organizations that are trying to break that and create that space. And this happens, of course, in the consumer domain in many developed countries. But it is, of course, unique that this case should happen in a developing country like Colombia. The importance of factual information, of consumers to receive factual information in an age of fake news is quite significant. The protection of freedom of expression and information here has an enormous impact on the right to health. Globally, over 400 million people are suffering from diabetes. About 340 million children and adolescents are overweight and obese. And despite these scary figures, soft drink companies continue to challenge the ability of the state and institutions to warn consumers about the dangers of sugary drinks. And here, of course, in the US, as you know, earlier this year, as part of the renewed negotiations over NAFTA, American food and soft drink companies successfully lobbied the Trump administration to use the trade talks with Mexico and Canada to limit the ability of the three members of the pact, Canada, Mexico, and the US, to warn consumers about the dangers of junk food, including sodas and sugary drinks. So you can see that here freedom of expression is coming up bang against, and freedom of information against the power of the private sector. The jury felt also that this case takes freedom of expression beyond the domain of individual political right and into the domain of social right. The right not just of me to access information, but of society, of groups of people to be able to demand the facts when it is of public interest. And so this decision, we felt, in today's consumer age is an extremely important one for our right to know and then to choose. And to speak, of course, further about this ruling that is the winner of this year's award, it is my pleasure to introduce Esperanza Cerón, Executive Director of Educar Consumidores, who will tell you more about the case and how she fought it. Thank you.
I'm here on behalf of Educar Consumidores, or Educating Consumers in English, an NGO that advocates for action on issues that affect human and environmental health. We are a small but fierce team of 8 people working for access to information and public health. Educar Consumidores was one of the plaintiffs in the case that rendered this decision, and I am grateful for the opportunity to tell you what this decision means for us and for average consumers in the Americas. This decision recognizes the right to information, freedom of expression, and the prohibition of censorships. It recognizes these rights as a fundamental deconstruction of a solid democracy. These are trying times for human and environmental health. Not only do we have to endure the pollution created by technologies like fracking and carbon emissions. For decades, the food industry has also been introducing flavor enhancers, processed sugar, and other harmful chemicals to our food. Based on the strong scientific evidence and documents from the World Health Organization, which clearly prove that consuming processed sugar at such high levels is related to development of costly chronic non-communicable diseases, the current leading cause of death worldwide. We launched a campaign to inform the public of this so consumers could make informed decisions about their eating habits. As was already explained, the sugary drinks industry tried to silence us, and for a while they succeeded. Momentarily, scientific evidence was useless in the face of powerful commercial interests until our human rights prevailed. In this case, a state agency with no expertise on health, defended the industry and imposed complete censorship on us, accusing us of having failed to present irrefutable proof for the information we were disseminating, even though the Ministry of Health itself agreed with the veracity of the information of our campaign. Free trade agreements influenced by the food industry are conditioning publicities, sponsorships, and labeling of food products in ways that prevent consumers from knowing that we are eating. This decision gives us the opportunity to have an open discussion with national and international courts, civil society, and people in general as consumers about these regulations which compromise our public health. It is happening elsewhere. We hope that by being able to continue our fight as Educar Consumidores, a national and international debate on the subject will take place. We also hope this decision opens the door to take public health measures that will inform consumers on the content of the food they eat. This decision also opens the door for us to advocate for clear food labeling and the prohibition of advertising to children, two reforms that will allow consumers to make more informed decisions about eating products with high concentration of ultra-processed sugar and other substances that endanger human health. In other words, we have an opportunity to prevail in this post-factual era. Finally, this decision gives us the opportunity to reveal interference by corporations in development of public health policies and the corruption that surrounds that interference. It will give us a chance to promote a debate on conflict of interest in the development of these policies. To sum up, this decision sends a clear message to the industry and commercial interests that our right to disseminate scientific information of public interest matter, and our right to receive that information and make informed decisions accordingly must prevail.
Tomas un jugo embotellado por la mañana, un té helado a mediodía, una gaseosa con la comida y un par más en la noche. Parece algo inofensivo, pero todas estas bebidas azucaradas en un solo día suman mucha azúcar adicional que puede provocarte graves problemas de salud, incluyendo la obesidad que causa diabetes, enfermedades del corazón y algunos tipos de cáncer. No te hagas daño tomando bebidas azucaradas. Mejor toma agua, leche o aromática sin azúcar. Cuida tu vida, tómala en serio.
So a prize that is presented by Columbia University is given to a group in Colombia. That was too obvious. That's nepotism, guys. Anyways, great job about the sugary drink thing. And for all of you who's worried about their sugar like dose, I mean, afterwards, there's going to be a reception. There's going to be a lot of sugary drinks that are going to be served. Don't worry. Your diabetes is awaiting you outside. Don't worry. By the way, talking about this, I remember like when during the presidential campaign, when the right wing was talking about immigrants and how they're using the analogy of like if you have a bowl of Skittles or a bowl of M&Ms and you know that 3 of them were poisonous, would you still eat them? And I'm thinking, if you're sitting there considering eating a whole bowl of M&Ms, Muslims and immigrants are the least of your problems. You should be worried about type 2 diabetes. Seriously. Or type 4, I think you guys have exceeded that. Anyways. The second prize to be confirmed this evening is in the best legal services category. There's a lot of legal terminology that I don't understand. With this prize, Colombia Global Freedom of Expression recognizes a legal brief or legal defense anywhere in the world that has protected freedom of expression and advanced or strengthened global understanding of freedom of expression and information. Now, the good news is they didn't give it to a group in Colombia, which is, at least they're giving a chance to other people. Because come on, that's going to be too obvious. The 2018 nominees, this was a very strong field. Some of those nominees are here tonight. They're all working in a range of issues at the heart of the struggle of the protection of freedom of expression. There were nominees from Argentina, Kenya, the United States, South Africa, Hungary, the United Kingdom, Nigeria. Only to name a few, the issues covered included withdrawal of official advertising, NGOs' access to information, criminal defamation, impeachment of Trump. I just made this one up. Colombia Global Freedom of Expression also received nominations for impressive lifelong contribution to global freedom of expression. Some of the nominees are here tonight, so if you guys didn't win, you can go back to my manual, How to Identify Oppressors, and hopefully next year you will win. So the 2018 Freedom of Expression Prize in the legal service category goes to the European Roma Rights Center for their interventions on the freedom of expression of Roma people in front of the European Court of Human Rights. And like for those of you who didn't know that, like me, the Roma people is what we colloquially call gypsies. They're one of the most persecuted groups of people around the world, and this group, the European Roma Rights Center, have done a wonderful job defending them. So to receive the prize, please welcome to the stage Ethel Brooks, Chair of the ERCC. And Adam, who's coming up.
Thank you, Bassem. Thank you, everybody here. Just to know that, so Adam and I are here together because what we do together. So we'll be up in front of you together. I'm very proud and very honored to accept this award on behalf of the European Roma Rights Center. And I am very proud, as a Romani woman, of this recognition of the contribution that Roma, with our support, are making to advance freedom of expression. Our organization is known for working to make sure that anti-Gypsyism is recognized as a specific form of racism, one that attacks the dignity and freedom of around 12 million Europeans. Many people are still not aware, for example, that Roma were enslaved in what is today Romania for 500 years. Until 1856, slave owners used Roma as a form of living currency, trafficking, selling, gifting, punishing, and torturing Romani people. The church, the aristocracy, and institutions of the state provided for slavery and profited hugely from slavery. But emancipation brought no reparations, no compensation, and no liberation from abject poverty. And far too many people are still not aware that more than 500,000 Roma perished in the Holocaust. In many historical accounts, this aspect of Nazi brutality had been relegated to the footnotes. And very often, the suffering of Europe's Romani people is not mentioned at all. Ignorance of our history has really helped to fuel the indifference to our oppression, and has helped to reinforce discrimination that continues to this day. The ERRC is working to empower Romani women to get compensation for forced sterilization and to challenge the abuse and segregation that occurs in maternity wards. We are supporting Romani families to challenge school segregation, forced evictions, and other human rights violations across the continent. These would be unimaginable in the lives of most Europeans, but are everyday occurrences for so many Roma. In that context, this award is something very special. The ERRC was founded 21 years ago as a kind of equivalent to the NAACP, for Roma in Europe. But it's only at the beginning of 2016 that the ERRC became a Roma-led organization for the first time. In the past, there was anxiety at the ERRC about freedom of expression. People took the view that freedom of expression represented a threat for Roma because of hate speech. Freedom of expression was not usually seen as one of the rights that would actually free us from anti-Gypsyism. And in this way, the work that you have chosen to honor represents a different vision, a vision that we have as a Roma-led organization, as a Romani majority organization. It's a vision that sees freedom of expression as one of our most important weapons to expose anti-Gypsyism and to defeat anti-Gypsyism. One of the cases that was recognized by this award involves a Romani woman punished for begging in Geneva. Our contribution was to push the European Court of Human Rights to confront the uncomfortable reality of an oppressed person expressing poverty. We asked the court to condemn a law that stifles that expression by playing on stereotypes about us. In another case, we challenged the European Court to imagine the world through the eyes of Romani people in Hungary. In that case, the court has to decide whether it was right for Hungarian courts to punish a Romani leader and the websites that linked to his video at the request of a far-right political party that sued him for linking racist thugs to that party's views. In that case, the Hungarian courts applied the Hungarian courts applied an impoverished idea of expression. We asked the European Court to take a richer approach based on an understanding of anti-Gypsyism and the courageous speech acts of people oppressed by it. This recognition is enormous. It acknowledges that Romani people are changing the landscape of freedom of expression. It's a recognition of what Romani people and other victims of ideologies of hate can accomplish. Racist intimidation seeks to make us afraid to complain, afraid to object, afraid to speak up. Racists would deny us freedom of expression that defend our liberties. We will be heard. And now I'm putting this certificate in the hands of my colleague, Adam Weiss, whom I would ask to say a few words about where he is taking it.
Thank you, Ethel. It is a huge honor for me to bring this award back to our team in Budapest. Hungary has been the organization's home for the past 21 years, and my own home for the past 5 years. I traveled here a few days ago after some very difficult conversations with colleagues at the ERRC and at other NGOs. I'm sure people here can easily understand how demoralized many of us feel right now in Hungary. It is one of many places where the authorities are denigrating the work of NGOs. And the authorities are attacking the most powerful tools that human rights advocates have: our freedom of expression and our freedom of association. The attempt to intimidate and silence NGOs and activists is an existential threat for the Roma rights movement and other human rights movements. So this recognition is a tremendous boost. It is a reminder about what NGOs can accomplish by empowering oppressed people to use their voices. It is a sign that in difficult times, our work can make a difference in unexpected ways. So we will be celebrating this and renewing our resolve. Thank you.
I find it very interesting and disheartening at the same time how a whole group of people like Roma people are being persecuted, and at the same time their culture are used as something cool. Like they wear their clothes, they use their style, but it's okay to persecute the people, which is very disheartening. You know, in Arabic, the word for gypsy is ghagar, and we use that as kind of, we do not have like a direct relation with the problem, many people don't even recognize that this is like a whole ethnicity of people. And we just use it for people to describe, either to describe it in a demeaning way, as describing someone who has no roots and no prospects, or sometimes romanticizing it, which is like a gypsy girl who is full of romance, which is like finding one of the most confusing ways that a group of people has been marginalized and persecuted in the heart of peace-loving Europe, which is very interesting. That's still happening in 2018. I'm very happy that I have hosted this ceremony. It is one of the very few events that I don't get a prize myself, so I'm very angry. So my ego is hurt. But I will accept reparations in the form of goodie bags or swag, Colombia swag, even a t-shirt, something cool like that, or a position, a faculty position, or money, or just first class ticket anywhere. I mean, I'm fine. I'm very flexible with this. I'm a very easy person. But I'm very happy that I've been here, been part of this, and I just want to make. Did you get my picture of this with the Colombia thing? Because I need it for my Facebook. Yes, thank you. I need that, and I need to prove that I was here with all of this. I look like Huckabee as she's like defending Trump with all of this. Anyway, so I invite you guys to get your daily dose of 3,000 calories of sugary drinks back in the faculty room, where we're gonna have our reception. Thank you very much, and good night.